Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek Online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Hey there, J-Man.
Hi.
Big weekend for you.
Well, part of me.
Well, yeah, at least your creation.
Yeah.
He became a famous movie star this weekend.
Yes, my avatar Bordicus has begun his own Hollywood career and is now starring in the major motion picture Paul.
If you found out that the artist or designer of that character was a Star Trek Online player, would you start to suspect maybe he did get inspired from
I'd be extremely flattered.
No royalties, though?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we have...
As long as it means that we could get Simon Pegg on the show, because he's in that as well.
Yeah, okay. That would be awesome. Well, we have a superstar episode lined up ourselves, at least a local star in our community. Later coming up on math, Al Rivera from Cryptic is joining us. And, well, he's the keeper of the math himself.
Yes, he is.
So, the keeper of the math and the teacher of the math combined together.
And together we shall rule this galaxy.
I have a feeling that might be one of these segments you might want to watch a couple of times to let everything click.
Yeah.
At least that's for me, but that's going to be an incredible segment. And then coming up, it's Tactical View, and that's going to be right up after the news. And Tactical View is the review of the Cloaked Intentions finale.
It was the big finale, so we got to take a look at that. And then after all that, we're going to finally dig into your answers on the Captain's Table in an epic community feedback. We also have a new question, a total discussion about everything. You can't miss this episode.
Big. It's probably our biggest community feedback question ever, and we're going to get a little bit on our soapbox.
Yep.
But before we do that, let's talk about the new voice chat integration news we got. So we know who it's from and what it's based on. It's like a third-party integration deal.
It is. A company named Vivox.
Okay.
And they're the ones supplying the actual, I guess, back-end tools and everything. But, all we've really seen is an announcement at this point. We haven't seen any UI integration or solid details on exactly how it's going to be implemented.
Well, you know what I like to do
will be available.
In the moments when we lack the details?
Make them up?
I like to Imagineer them.
Yeah.
So what I would kind of like to see is if when you're by like satellites and things like that, there's a radio noise sort of sound effect that's in there, that sound effects thing. But wouldn't it be cool, though, if when you're flying around, if that radio chatter was the zone chat of the Vivox chat system, just turned way down and maybe with a reverb kind of mumble effect applied to it. And wouldn't it be cool if you had a button or a hotkey that you could press and it would bring those levels up and you could hear the zone chatter and you could start talking and things like that, and then you release the button and it goes back down to the background sound.
I would like that.
That'd be a really cool way to have that chat system in zone without being overwhelming.
I got to admit that I'm not really a big fan of like zone-wide public chat like that, but I would really love to have the option of having, if one of my friends online and I log in and I get an incoming hail message saying, would you like to open voice chat with Hoopachoop, whoever sent me the tell.
Hoopachoop's great.
Obviously, I'm going to say no because I hate most people, but on the rare chance that it's somebody I actually want to talk to, it would be nice to just be able to talk to them. Yeah. In past MMOs, when they've implemented integrated voice chat, the quality has been very subpar because they tried to limit the bandwidth usage so they don't all of a sudden go way overboard. It means that most people don't end up using it because they can get better quality out of Ventrilo or TeamSpeak or Mumble. I haven't really looked into
Vivox much, but I know some of the newer integrated voice protocols are able to do bandwidth scaling.
Yes.
And so they can go up and down in quality based on your available bandwidth. So that might be something we see. We got a bunch of new information laid on us this week from the new Ask Cryptic that came out.
We're not going to cover all of it. It's another massive one, so check it out. There's also information about the duty roster, which we're not going to cover here, mainly because I feel like it's still a moving target.
Yeah, I understand.
It's still so much in flux that covering it too much, I feel, is a little premature right now.
And I wasn't staying completely current in the last week on it, and I figure we really want to make sure we can kind of try to wrap our brains around it before we talk about it. So we're not ignoring it, but it's just kind of something we're going to get to.
There is some information, a few different questions in the Ask Cryptic. Check that out in our show notes. Yeah. But, a few of the things that did stand out to me is new information we haven't gotten previously, including some tips, hints, teasers about a future featured episode, featured series that may take place in or around Deep Space Nine.
Oh, give it some DS9 love.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people have complained, the scale's a little off. It feels a little dead inside. They need more life on the promenade.
So you think they would use this as an opportunity to sort of take a once-over to DS9?
They already confirmed it, basically.
Oh, okay.
That if they do end up doing this featured series at or near Deep Space Nine, they will revamp it. Another tidbit from the Ask Cryptic that I'm really excited about, this is kind of a pet feature I've been looking forward to them re-adding to the game, is Boff voices, or at the very least, barking. So that they occasionally just say
like
things.
Like a grunt or something, yeah.
Right. So their Cryptic is actively hiring a software developer to relaunch this feature.
Awesome.
So they're looking for somebody that can specifically help them out with the barking, the voice over integration.
You know, it's funny from the just jumping back to the going once over on Deep Space Nine. The chat room, you know, is just chatting about that briefly. And I glanced over, and it's interesting to see a couple people mention they'd really like to see Quark's bar have automatic doors.
Yeah,
that would, you know, because
so that it's not a separate zone.
Yeah, that would be really neat because that's just that Deep Space Nine door sound or those airlocks, those.
Yeah.
Some of Deep Space Nine's sound effects are some of the most unique in the series.
And if you remember when they revamped Earth Space Dock, they did change some of those places so that they were no longer separate zones. Like the Admiral's office is no longer a separate zone.
Right.
So that could definitely be something they'd look into.
Yeah. It's funny to be, I don't know, to be reminiscing about doors, but that's true. Something else that came out on the last week on Tribble is the new multi-vector assault mode. Oh, mode, right.
Mode.
And this has kind of got a few unique things. Now, I got my hands on it just for a little bit. I went in and had fun, and I jumped into Starbase 24, and for a while, I managed to do pretty good, but it was a fun experience, but I did end up getting myself blown up.
All three pieces?
No, I think once the piece I'm in blows up, that's game over. Anyway,
yeah, okay.
So I think that was the first to go. Go figure. At one point, I'm pretty sure.
Why am I not surprised that you blew up?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, at one point, I'm pretty sure one of my other pieces gave me a science team heal, though, so that was pretty neat. So what do we know about this thing at this point?
Well, first of all, it's kind of unique in that you get this, instead of having a ship that has a special ability, this is a console that you can plug into the ship. Now, in some discussions with other devs off the air and things like that, including Al will be with us for math later on, we actually had a kind of an informal chat prep yesterday that you can find on Justin TV. I'll put a link to that in our show notes.
Cool.
We talked quite a bit about multi-vector assault mode. The plan for this is that this kind of a console will eventually be available on many different ships in many different tiers, and that moving down the line in the future ship abilities will no longer be tied to a specific ship type, but instead become this console.
Oh, that's fantastic, especially for somebody like me who almost changes ships every week. So, you know, the unique thing about this, too, at least with the version I played on the Prometheus, is you can choose which section you want to control.
Yeah.
That's a fun extra gameplay element. I honestly, really, when I did that, it was neat. And what I learned almost immediately afterwards is, at least at this point in time, different sections have a different cooldown. Or at least the one section has a longer cooldown.
Well, it's that you fire that one off and it fires a longer cooldown. The other ones cool down faster. The idea there being that you can't use the same one back to back to back, but you're forced to switch to a different multi-vector mode.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, Tactical View is coming up, but before we get to that, we just wanted to take care of a little business. Now, we don't usually do this, and we won't make a habit out of it. And if you're a frequent viewer, I apologize if you might think I sound like a broken record. But recently, the J-Man here and I've been talking sort of about the future of STOked and the future of the network Jupiter Broadcasting. And we've reached a point. We've been around as a company since 2008. We've been podcasting since 2006. And we really are at a point now where we want to get serious about doing this.
We want to do this for a living.
Yeah, at full time, because we've been doing it in our spare time, and we're to the point where we think we can do so much more if we can dedicate ourselves fully at it. And I'm hoping what's happened recently, and I apologize, I'm still dealing with the repercussions because, you know, I have a wife and a family, so it's sort of a stressful time.
Well, the first time you brought this up on the air was during the Celebrity Meltdown episode.
Yeah, I was like, I'm having my own meltdown tonight. I found out earlier in the week that I'm losing my employment, and because of the type of work that we do here at Jupiter Broadcasting, it takes a certain type of employer to be extremely flexible with our shooting schedules.
You can't have a 9-to-5 job that also frequently requires overtime or anything like that, or being on call 24/7 or anything like that.
Right, and in the IT field, that's a very, very general requirement.
Right.
So we're going to give a go at going full-time at Jupiter Broadcasting because we honestly, this is the only thing that we have passion for. This is what we want to do, and we think we can make it work. We've got a very large audience, and we're considering looking out to advertisers. So if you know someone who might be interested in marketing their product to a bunch of really awesome people online, please contact us.
Star Trek fans, gamers, internet enthusiasts, media enthusiasts. That we have a very wide range of audience members. Linux fans.
Yep.
They're all over the place.
We've done surveys before, and we know that we have some of the most the best demographics in online media, and so we'd love to talk to somebody. If you want to go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, there's a advertising link up at the top of the page. Another option that we're putting out there that we think could even work out better if people are comfortable with it is we're extending a request for donations. And if you go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/donate, we have a section there where you can sign up for a monthly contribution plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do this if you're not comfortable.
No.
And we only want people that consider our content to be valuable to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go over there, you can subscribe monthly or you can give us a one-time donation. To be frank, in order to be realistic to make this to work, we have to be able to project in budgets and know what our income is. So the monthly subscriptions, if you are comfortable, are the most beneficial to the network.
Another way that that's beneficial is, if we have to go out and seek sponsors, first of all, we have to give them showtime. And some of our viewers may be turned off by those little speed bumps where we have to talk about somebody that's paying us to do this. It would have to happen, though.
And we would try to remain independent, and we would. But we know people. It changes the show, and we're okay with that. And we hope maybe you'd be okay. But we thought if the donation model does work like a magazine type subscription, only it's for your content. I mean, everything's going to stay free. But if you're comfortable subscribing like you would to something like that. If we can generate our base revenue to cover our costs and basically pay us full time, we don't have to go to advertising.
We don't have to answer to a sponsor of any kind.
We don't have to add anything to the show that wouldn't be there organically.
Yeah. Because it's you guys that already watch us and already enjoy the content that would then be supporting the network.
So you become our bosses, and in a real way, you control the content because you are paying us. And if that works, that would be an incredible model for us for an independent online media where we're creating the content that you want. And of course, when people make those donations, there is a spot in there to leave a message, and we pay attention to all of that feedback very clearly. If we do get a go at this and we make an attempt for advertisers, it's our commitment to you that as if we do integrate any advertising, which we don't know if we will, but if we do, we will keep the editorial content independent and we won't let it impact our comments and things like that. We just wouldn't go that route. Otherwise, there would be no point in tuning in, and we know we'd lose credibility, so we'll never do that. But I sincerely appreciate anyone's time and consideration of that. And also, if you can't afford to give anything, that's absolutely okay.
We provide the service for free because we like to do it.
And really, if you want to say thanks, check out some of the other shows, Jupiter at Night and the Linux Action Show and Lotso. All of those are great shows, and even just getting the numbers up helps when we're searching for potential sponsors. Yeah. So always something else is another way to help out is just to check out the other content. All right, J-Man, well, enough of that business stuff.
Have we bored you to tears? Yeah. Let's wake you up.
Let's give everybody what they're looking for, J-Man. Let's jump in to Tactical View. Hello everyone and welcome to Tactical View. Now coming up, we're going to review Cutting the Cord, the final episode in the Cloaked Intentions series. This is the
big
fifth one,
finale.
Right? Okay, geez. This is a huge one, and we're going to try to bang through this stuff. And one of the things that I just want to put out there up front, because it always changes up the gameplay, is I did it grouped again.
And I was solo again.
So we get both perspectives. And I'll say the first thing is when we warped into space, I was sort of... I was like, I said on the live stream, I was like a starving man who's been on an island for a couple of months who just came to a steak dinner. Yeah, I was ready for some space combat.
All you can eat, practically.
yeah, it was. I was in a group with VAs, and there was a ton of baddies. Yeah. But it was good. It was challenging, and I got my steak meal. I was refreshed. And
well, the whole planet is defended also by a number of turrets.
Yeah.
So if you get too close to that second group, you have to deal with not only the group, which was a pretty beefy group because you were scaled up, but also the turrets as well.
Well, even you doing it solo, it was still a pretty big group.
It was. There were, I think, 3 birds of prey in each group, but I don't think it worked as well for solo.
Okay.
By the time I finished both groups and a number of turrets, I was like, wow, I've got 3 or 4 more turrets to go before I can beam down. And I was like, well, this is fine. I'm kind of done though. Can we just wrap this up already?
Once you did wrap it up, you beamed down to the planet, and I beamed down with a full group. You beamed down solo.
I did.
And so you got up a dialogue box that says they've redirected you and you're by yourself. Didn't quite work for grouping.
No, because you still had a full team.
Yeah, but there's just mechanics like that. And when I replay solo, like I always do, then that will make sense.
Now, there is also an option, though, if you do beam down solo, if you're doing the mission on your own, that you can occasionally beam in support from your... ostensibly from your ship, although they don't wear the right uniforms or anything, so who knows?
Well, that maybe
who knows where they come from?
Maybe that'll come later. But actually, through this entire episode, you stay in communication with your ship, and I really like that because you actually use it intelligently to your advantage, and you can bring down these tactical strikes from your ship up in orbit, which is a really refreshing touch.
The first cutscene that really took me by surprise was calling down the first orbital strike, because there's a number. First of all, the camera pans over to this other rooftop where there's a number of Scorpion fighters parked there.
Yeah.
When you blow the first one up, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. They use the orbital. Oh my God, the rest of them are blowing up.
Absolutely. And it's like, heck yeah, I would use those resources at my fingertips. I'm a freaking captain. Yeah, I like the orbital strike. The other thing that struck me, other than, again, okay, let's take a moment, pause. I know we're trying to move fast because this is big, but we have to say, Cryptic, hats off on the ground environment.
Oh, seriously. The whole map is just, I don't even know how to describe it, really. You have to see it to believe that this is actually in-game.
It is beautiful, and it is realistic, and there's elements in there like there's people on the ground fighting, having squabbles, just NPCs fighting amongst each other.
While you're traveling around the rooftops to get the orbital bombardments in place and everything.
And just the haze out in the horizon, be able to see some of the objects in the map was so huge. And I intend to go back and look at all aspects of this map, because looking at that huge map, I could see there's areas I didn't even go to.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a visit again, and just extremely, extremely lifelike. Really, really liked it.
The map was large enough that it actually, at one point, I did get lost.
Yeah,
so
that was
thank God for this new feature that they put in there called the virtual guide path.
Oh, I loved this virtual guide path.
If they would have had this last week,
you wouldn't have
that
gotten lost.
hide from the fighters thing, I would never have gotten lost.
And I was surprised. A lot of people in the comments said they also got lost. A lot of people in the show comments. And this virtual guide path thing was so great, and it was done super well. It looked like a heads-up display type item, and your BOF explains to you that you're going to get this. There's little arrows so you even know the direction you're supposed to go in. Yep. I would like to see this added to every single ground mission available, and I would desperately like to see this added to the Foundry.
Yes.
So that would be great.
Oh my God, yes.
I did, though, after we were done with the core aspect of the mission, you no longer got the guide path, and we still hadn't wrapped up the engineering and science optional stuff, and our whole team was just completely lost.
Because you were following the path the whole time and not really paying attention to the...
Well, and it's, you have to go up and around and then down, and you're trapped in a little area and you go up and around again. Yep. But, as I play it again, I'm sure I won't struggle as much.
So there was one point where you're following this guide path and all of a sudden you get bombarded by a Scorpion fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this might have happened in the previous episode at some point if you were caught out in the open, but I never got caught out in the open. But this time it actually shoots at you.
And you get to shoot back.
You can shoot it back. Neither of us were able to, but there are folks in the chat room that have said that if you actually manage to destroy the thing, you get an extra accolade for it. Wow. I want to replay it just for that.
Yeah, I'll stay up
just to shoot down the Scorpion.
Yes. Yeah, that's...
And you don't get a lot of time. It basically flies past you and does one pass, and then it's out of there.
Yeah. So you got to be ready.
Yeah.
I guess fire off some of your abilities and take aim. So... You can move along, and actually a little sooner than I expect, you actually run into Hakiv. I mean, it comes up pretty quick, and it keeps with a good pace.
Which was nice, right? It was a good pace. It meant that you weren't bogged down in that ground combat It always felt like you were doing something, and that the encounters that you had with Romulans on the ground troops never were like, oh God, I got to fight more.
I'm stuck in tar.
Right.
Yeah, you get to keep moving.
Yeah.
And you, unfortunately, though, hit a bug that a few other people in our chat room mentioned. Which may or may not be actually already fixed by the time this episode comes out. But Hakiv was like way up on the.
Yeah, he's got super ninja leaps. He is like some sort of superhero. And if you get him too close, him or any of the people in his team, too close to some of those surrounding buildings, they'll leap to the rooftops.
And the warning there is if he's up there, don't kill him.
No.
Because what comes later on is sort of cool and epic, but you have to be able to get to his body.
Yes.
So you
have to interact with his body after you've downed him. And if he's up on a rooftop, you got to do the whole ground map over.
So what'd you think of Hakiv's end here?
I thought it was a little understated, but at the same time, it was like, well, yeah, that's how it has to happen.
Yeah.
We've defeated him. He died.
Well, and his death is, it's rather, it's unepic because he was just a pawn. He himself, while he thought he was epic, was not actually an epic character.
Exactly.
And so his death was also not as satisfying because in reality, he sort of just deserved that death, even despite of what he might have thought of himself.
Yep.
I liked it a lot, and I thought it was a good way to handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need a tribute.
No.
So after
the action doesn't stop there either. Yeah. I mean, you get this kind of moment of silence in honor of this great villain, whatever.
I actually thought we were done. I thought at that point we were done.
Yeah, but no.
No. In fact, you get some epic in your face. Not only do you quickly run into some rather awesome-looking Iconian gateways that you've got to...
Oh, dude, you didn't see this because your team was doing it.
Right.
But when the first time I opened one of those doors, it slid up and there was a Romulan technician sitting in front of a...
Now, was he like in a special uniform? How did you
He
know
was
he was
just a Romulan.
Okay.
But he was there working at a thing. And as I approached the gate, he stopped working, turned on the gate, which showed a picture of Kronos, and he leapt into the gate, which then closed behind him. Sequel? Anybody?
Oh, man. Or somebody take that and run in the Foundry.
Absolutely.
That sounds crazy great. Okay. Wow. Well, that would be interesting to see where that goes. Yeah, I didn't get to see that, but what I did see is after you wrap up your time with the Gateway there, your ship comes to the rescue again, and it's pretty cool because you're on the ground, and I don't know if this happens right before the cut or right as the cut happens, but you hear the torpedo, and you're like, what? And then the camera pans up, and you see, you know, these high-yield torpedoes coming in and boom, 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 and blowing up this huge arch of a Gateway.
Now, both of us kind of were tongue-in-cheek like, wait, I was standing right next to that.
Yeah. I hope I had like a shield boost on or something. You know, you have to figure maybe they fired multiple torpedoes because each one was a lower yield. And you've seen in Star Trek V when they're down and they fire torpedoes.
I was just going to mention that it's kind of a callback in a way.
Right.
To destroy the big thing with the ship.
Yeah.
Use your ship.
Yeah. Now, what happened to me, although I didn't really mind that much, is one thing that we didn't really make comment on is, you know, they have these waiting for players to finish dialogue boxes now so everyone can get through the cutscenes and read stuff.
Right.
Really appreciate those being there. There was some sort of loop bug or something that we actually saw that cutscene
play through 5 times
for each member.
Yeah.
It was still cool though. So that was good. Then once you're there, like the ground area is all blowed up, and now you're in an altered environment.
Right.
It was a nice, like, you know, just like in the last mission, we went from day to night. Now we went from clean to blowed up.
Now you stuck around to do the optionals, but pretty much when you finish that, you beam out.
Yeah.
To confront
another space battle.
This was ridiculous. Now,
this is definitely a season finale space battle.
He was grouped,
Yeah.
so it all scaled up. He started this combat like 10 minutes or so before.
Yeah.
I finished before him.
Yeah, you got in. Yeah, I was fighting for about 10 minutes before you even zoned to the space area and you were done. And
I probably finished about 5 minutes ahead of you. That's how scaled up and epic and whoa.
And I won't lie, you know, the space environment itself was a bit ordinary, but the battle itself was cool, and it felt like the right size because there was one point we were just going and going, and I was starting to doubt if we were going to make it. So my emotional, like, if you could see my emotions on a chart, it was like, oh, I'm getting anxious. I don't know if we're going to pull this off. I don't know if we're going to do it. And my hull's getting down to about 40%. My shields are down. But luckily, I'm able to hit them with evasive maneuvers. I get just out of firing range, fire off all my buffs, get everything back up, get back into combat. And right then, the whole team just kind of clicked, and we just started dropping the bad guys one by one. And then it's just this immediate sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that is extremely rewarding. But it did take us a lot longer.
Well, and there's still a few tricks up their sleeves after you finish off all of the... there's a scimitar you have to take down, which is extremely tough.
Yes.
But if you finish off all the little minions floating around, you still have to contend with that Thaleron cannon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got hit with it, but the entire Riemann fleet got hit with it on my map.
Oh, no kidding.
Half of them were just obliterated in a single shot.
I was flying right into it when I realized what it was, came to an all-stop reversed engines and just missed it. It was close. And then once you manage to get past that, you've got a surprise coming in from a donut in space. The space donut portal. I don't know what you want to call that, but the Iconians apparently can build these portals into all kinds of things, including asteroids. And sure enough, they have one there, and they come in, and we're not sure if they rescue... what's her face?
Sela,
or if they're capturing her.
I think it's actually probably a little bit of both. She is a puppet for them, but she's a powerful puppet. She's in control of a large portion.
She's going to go get her licks. She's going to get punished.
She's going to get probably some punishment, but they're going to keep her around as a continued puppet to continue running the Romulan fleet, at least the portion that she is in control
of. And we got another peek at an Iconian ship.
We did.
Which is cool. And so we're definitely getting more and more hints towards the Iconians. I mean, this is just in our face now.
I have a feeling that we will be seeing the Iconians as the core of the content that will launch when the level cap is eventually raised to Fleet Admiral.
So you think this will be like the new... So you think we'll go to Iconian space for Fleet Admirals?
Maybe not Iconian space, but it will be a direct confrontation, I believe, with them. That's what my gut tells me.
That would be really awesome.
Yeah.
So not a featured episode.
No. Because featured episodes are leveled, and I don't think that a lieutenant should go up against the Iconians.
Be some great new end game content. There could be a lot of fun in that. Well, after that happens, which is a lot of stuff to go over, you actually are not even done yet if you don't want to be. After you...
No, that's when you can get your reward for the mission itself, which is, as many people know, a Riemann Boff, which has some cool psychic abilities. Like this guy is probably going to kick some butt in ground combat.
That's what I was thinking.
Because nobody has resistances to psychic abilities.
Ooh.
So I'm going to keep him in my ground away team, I think, for a while. See how it works out. He might even replace my medic, to be honest, because he is a science officer.
Yep. Yep.
So we'll see how that works.
You've also got the new tractor torpedo mine, which I want to get my hands on. I was thinking maybe I'd celebrate because if you followed the news that we didn't cover, the Galaxy X got a quick new addition to a rear weapon slot. And I was thinking
they added one more aft slot.
I'm going to celebrate and throw that new tractor torpedo mine launcher thing in there.
I don't think I'm going to do it. I could see definitely these being used in PvP. I think tractor beams are very good in PvP.
Yep.
I don't think I'm going to use them myself, but I know that there are people out there excited about getting these equipped and everything.
Did you go have the optional barbecue with Obasek?
Yeah, we went out for a few drinks.
Yeah.
Hung out.
At a party. So if you didn't do that, you can actually go get a little chat with Obasek that sort of explains what he's doing now, including the fact that he's moving into the vault, which is neat because that's an awesome area. And you find out what he plans to do with other Romulans and things like that.
It's basically just an epilogue. You've finished the whole thing and you want to find out what Obasek and the rest of the Remans are doing. So you just go have a chat with him.
They're definitely associating us with Obasek, and I wonder if Obasek is going to become like our Tomalak in the next generation. You're always running into the Captain Tomalak or whatever, and maybe Obasek's our Reman Tomalak, or I don't know. We'll see, because I hope we see more of him in the future.
Well, he also gave us a toy though. If you finish your whole conversation with him, that's how you get this that you're seeing in our background.
Yeah,
which is another throwback to the Horda episode.
The No Kill Eye trophy. You can go equip that in your your deep space on your 10 forward area.
Yeah, it's a floor trophy.
Yeah,
you can put it in your lounge.
So the whole series is now complete. And after I got done playing, my first comment was, this whole series is some of Cryptic's best work.
I agree. I do. I've had some complaints, minor complaints along the way of little bugs that have been hiccups or AI errors like the jumping on the top of the buildings. That kind of stuff I think is just going to happen occasionally. But on a whole, this has, again, raised the bar. This episode, this whole series has really, not only has it been fun to play, it's been just fun to talk about, fun to experience. This is Star Trek.
This has been the most Trek gameplay I've ever had.
I'm having a weekly Star Trek experience.
This is as much Trek gameplay that I think I've had since Star Trek, the 25th anniversary game. I mean, this is just absolutely core Star Trek storytelling. And, I look back to friends that I know who tried the game and then stopped, and I actually feel a bit of like loss for them, because I know that they're Star Trek fans, and I know how rewarding this would be to experience for them, and they're not. So I hope that this work that's been done brings more people in. The people want that Star Trek, and hopefully this will be the thing that brings even more people to the game, because it is absolutely worth it.
I think that's actually a pretty good segue. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this in our community feedback segment. We have a new topic to discuss with everybody.
Yeah.
But first, let's get mathed. Hello everybody, and welcome back to You Got Math. Now I know it's been a long time since I did anything like this for you guys, and to make it up for you, I've got something really special for today's episode. It's also going to be a little bit different than usual. I usually kind of just go through these and edit them up and make it really all sharp and pretty and everything. Well, that's not going to happen this time, and you're just going to have to live with it, because joining me today on the line is we've got the one and only, world famous, CaptainGeko Rivera, joining us to do what I'm going to call a guest host spot for You Got Mathed. Al, thanks for joining me.
Hi there.
Nice. So we're going to be talking some in-depth math regarding damage resistances and diminishing returns. Now, first of all, just to kind of get the ball rolling, now, if you guys don't know, Al is a lead designer at Cryptic Studios. He has been known as the keeper of the maths, if I'm not incorrect there. And
that is a nickname you have given me, and that is fine.
But he's also been in charge of content and everything like that. Basically, anything that goes into the game usually crosses his desk at some point. So heavy is the head that wears the crown, I guess. But as I said, keeper of the math. So great guy to have on the line here to give you guys the inside scoop on some of this stuff. Now, diminishing returns is something that is present in a lot of MMOs. Maybe, Al, I wonder if you could just give us kind of a high-level overview on why it exists to begin with, just from a design standpoint.
Sure. Well, it's a it's kind of a philosophical, and in some ways just kind of a personal opinion on whether or not to introduce a diminishing returns into the game. There's when you're faced with the decision, and we've gone back and forth on it on many different occasions, and we actually use different systems in different parts of the games, but you can either decide to just the hell with it and just let players buff themselves to however they want, or you could put in a cap, a max cap, or you could put in diminishing return. There are a few other kind of squishy parts in between, but I think one time I was really influenced, I think probably the time I was most influenced was I was playing, I think it was EverQuest 2, and I don't remember what character I was playing, but I was playing, I was around level 4 or something. I just started the game, and I was a buffer. I like playing buff characters. Mm-hmm. And I had this AoE buff, and I leveled up, so I want to get that power. And I says, great, now everyone's going to love me. I'm going to go into a team and get a team, and I'm going to buff everybody, whatever it was, damage resistance or damage. No idea what it was at this point. And I go in, and we started combat, and I cast my spell, and it actually told me, your spell did nothing because someone else cast a higher level one than you. And that really annoyed me.
Yeah.
That really made my character, my choice worthless. And it makes it, well, now I have this, as long as there's somebody higher level than me or better than me in some way, then I'm never going to get an advantage of it. I would have been much happier even if I only contributed a little bit.
Right.
So that really actually influenced a lot of my decisions going forward. Because we could have made damage resistance been a max. Now, what we didn't want to do for sure is let players be able to get to 100% damage resistance. And
sure, you don't want invulnerable players out there that just can't be touched by anybody.
And no matter what we do, as far as trying to be safe, as far as like how we make the numbers, some players are going to be able to find a way to do that with buffs and items and whatever it is they're going to do. So the diminishing return system is there as a fail-safe to make sure you don't go above, get to maximum. We set the cap at 75%, and that's where it curves to. And we'll talk about that in detail later.
And it makes it so that you can obtain a single piece of gear, and that single piece of gear does have an effect on your overall character build, but if you stack multiple of that same item, it doesn't have a profound effect, basically. Am I understanding that correctly, basically?
Well, if the further away you are from the max, it's not going to diminish much. So at very small levels, particularly in the beginning of the game, you're barely even going to notice any type of diminishing returns. You'll see the numbers not be exactly what you input, but they're never going. But the impact is going to be minimal. It's when you start approaching the higher numbers that you'll start seeing that hey, this really didn't do that much because you're approaching the max. And that's okay because that works for the min-maxers. They want to get every little bit out of something, and that's fine.
Well, let's go ahead and jump in right into the low end, because even low-end players, brand new players that get like an item that says +5 resistance or something, will notice that right off the bat, a +5 resistance item doesn't actually portray 5% resistance on your character sheet.
That's
so
correct.
We can tell that diminishing returns kick in almost immediately, but can you tell us a little bit about the math behind it and how... I guess let's just jump straight into the formulas. I mean, you've given me a spreadsheet that I'm going to be linking in our show notes that people can plug their figures in to kind of figure this out on a more fine-tuned level. But for the purposes of this segment, let's just cover it kind of as a generality.
Sure. So I kind of put together an example. So we'll start with a brand new character, for instance, and who has no damage resistance. And if you're not familiar, you can go to your status page on your ship or your character, and you can see your damage resistance under defenses, and you'll start off with 0. So let's say you got a hold of a Mark I disruptor dampeners. When you get info on that, you right-click on it, or if you hover over it, you'll see that it says +5 disruptor damage resistance. But it's not 5%. That is the magnitude. And something we touched on a little earlier in earlier conversations, that there's a difference between the magnitude and the damage resistance. The magnitude is the value of the item, and then the damage resistance is the result from that.
Now, the magnitude also is what's actually shown on the tooltip itself.
Yes, the magnitude is shown on the tooltip. The damage resistance is shown on the character status page. Right. So for most people who are just casual players, you can just see on your status page exactly what you get, and that's easy to verify. You want to show a PvP and have someone shoot you, you can see the actual percentage working. So that 5 is effectively the number that the designers enter onto the item. Okay, that is math, and effectively it's a 1 over x formula, which allows you to approach. If at 1 over x, you can, no matter how big the denominator is, you'll always still take damage. So that's how the basic formula works. Mm-hmm. So what we do is all damage resistance abilities and items have a magnitude, and what the system does is sums all of those up all together. So you may have damage resistance from items, you may have an ability, you may have some of your skills are going to give some of those magnitudes.
And when you're talking about damage resistance in general, all of those are plugged into this final formula in the same way, right? Like yes. Items don't matter more than abilities or vice versa, correct?
That is correct.
So damage resistance is damage resistance.
Yes, that's correct.
Good to know.
So the system adds all those magnitudes together, and the first thing it does is we diminish the magnitude. So mm-hmm. the magnitude itself is diminished, and then that is plugged into the formula, that the big, really chewy, ugly formula there.
Which I'm probably showing on the screen right now. Don't be scared.
You'll also notice on that formula there is a damage resistance percent max, and mm-hmm. that is a hard number that is in the game. That is 75%. So that is the max damage resistance you can typically get from items. There are some exceptions.
Let's go ahead and sidetrack for just a moment, because the whole idea of diminishing returns, I think, can be very easily portrayed by a graph that you sent me, which shows the actual curve of the diminishing returns. This is also goes back to what you were saying earlier, where at the low levels and at the low end of this chart, you're seeing an almost 1-for-1 contribution. But as you get closer and closer to 75, each point of magnitude contributes less to the overall resistance itself. Now, this chart is, again, included on the Excel spreadsheet that's in our show notes, so if you want to take a closer look at that, it's available to you. Now, you said that 75% is the cap in almost every instance. Now, there are a few exceptions to this. I know most notably is the Intrepid ablative hull plating, mm-hmm. which actually... now, you and I went over some of the interior math of this yesterday in a kind of informal pre-chat, but in a nutshell, it works its way into the math to make your resistances at or close to 90%, regardless of where you begin. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Well, the ablative armor, and that's the only one off the top of my head that I can remember that ignores diminishing returns. There may be some others that I'm not aware of. I'm sure there's some critter ones that, some NPC ones that do that as well. Mm-hmm. But it completely ignores it. And you have to know as you go through the formula, it's not that the damage resistance is diminished. It's that the magnitude is diminished. And
right.
So the magnitudes of all your other abilities and items get diminished, and then the magnitude of ablative armor, and the magnitude on that is really high. It's 90. But if you look in the if you plug into the Excel spreadsheet I send you, plug in a 90, you'll notice, and I'll do that on mine here, it'll actually approach, basically the spreadsheet will report a 75%, but it's, as 98.9%, because you look at the non-diminished resistance, 98.9. So it gets you really, really high, and then that magnitude of 90 then is added directly to the diminished values of all the other magnitudes, and then that results into the actual damage resistance.
Another really cool part of this spreadsheet that was included is, this might be handy for just people that are trying to balance themselves between different choices of gear, but there's a effective hit point boost. Basically, when you're receiving less damage, it is as if you had more hit points. It's an alternative way of looking at it. So. Now, do you guys also use that for some internal balancing?
I included that for reference here, and this is kind of the sheet I put up there is kind of a chewed up kind of version of what we actually use. We actually do generate our numbers from Excel spreadsheets. But I included that there for just that reason, so you can see. And what we do with that is that allows us to compare what other abilities that might also give you hit point bonuses. And we do a lot of that for balance purposes. Say, okay, well, if this is going to do damage, what is damage compared to holding, and what is damage resistance compared to defense, or how is damage resistance compared to hit point bonus? So it's a reference for us, so that way we can make sure that one particular item is fairly balanced to another. And it's also an interesting equation to see. And as we talked about earlier, if you're familiar with Excel and you manipulate this around, you can point your effective hit point row to the damage resistance instead of the diminished return damage resistance, and see if I did everything right in this sheet, that the hit points actually goes up the same every value. So
you mentioned if you got this right. I do want to, I forgot to do this at the beginning of the segment, but first of all of this is subject to change, people. They could decide from this interview that they're doing it wrong. So keep that in mind. Yes. Another thing is that while the math within the engine is correct, it doesn't always directly translate to when he's trying to tell us about it. So keep that in mind as well. But if you notice any flaws, definitely bring them up.
Yeah, I'll want to throw that caveat out there. Definitely, I kind of pulled this out of the engine and rewrote it to make it a little more legible for the layman. Mm-hmm. I could have easily missed a number, a 1 or a a negative value somewhere.
Another set of parentheses.
I'm sure exactly. So I'm sure we'll get emails on there, someone saying, "Hey, this doesn't jive," and I apologize for that. I'll readjust it if we find something.
Now, Al, I had one more question, and I don't even know if there is an actual answer to this, but in terms of the curve itself, the diminishing return curve, is there a point that maybe a casual player can kind of eyeball it where it starts to not become worthwhile to invest in further damage resistance, or is because of the state of the curve, is it always worthwhile to get more resistance?
I would say that if you look at the graph, up to about 50% damage resistance, the slope is always it's greater than it's a greater angle than 45%. Mm-hmm. Once as you pass that inflection point at 45% and the angle is going down less, then mm-hmm. you're actually getting a lot less value, bang for your buck at that point.
So around 45% is probably something to eyeball if you don't want to do all the hardcore math?
No, I'm saying 45 degrees on that slope, which would probably,
I get you.
Which would probably put you around 55% damage resistance at that point. You're no longer getting more, it's sloping down, right? The slope is getting down, so it's starting to level out. And so that might be the best. I mean, it's up for interpretation. Right.
And also keep in mind that damage resistance debuffs that your enemies may throw at you mm-hmm. directly impact the damage resistance magnitude prior to being applied to your actual resistances.
Yeah, if you scoot down to the bottom formula, after you've determined your magnitude that you have, you can then plug into that final formula, and that'll actually tell you what your percent damage resistance is. And you'll see in the formula 1 plus sum of all damage resistance mags. That's where you would put that. But if you have debuffs, you would then stick in there as you would replace that with 1 plus sum of all diminished mags over 1 plus sum of all diminished mag debuffs. So they work to cancel each other out really well.
So even though an average player could, like we just said earlier, eyeball it around, what was that, about 55%? I'm sorry, I forgot what we said.
I was saying is that's at around 55% is when you start getting a lower return on your investment mm-hmm. at that point.
So even though that's a good place to eyeball it, you might keep in mind that some enemies might have abilities, especially in PvP, that will effectively diminish that.
Sure.
If you don't mind, just walk us through that entire thing.
The first thing that we do is we take we sum up all the magnitudes, all the magnitudes from all your items, all your abilities, all your skills, and we plug that into that big chewy formula. Mm-hmm. And the damage resistance max is 75%. And so after you get through that whole formula, you're going to end up with your diminished return value. So for instance, if you were a brand new character and all you had was a Mark 1 Disruptor Dampener, it gives you +5 Disruptor damage resistance. You plug that through there. Note that our UI multiplies all the magnitudes by 100. So
a +5 is actually plus 0.05.
Yes, as far as the math is concerned.
Okay.
Yes. So you would just make that conversion. It does that only for the magnitudes, not for the damage resistance. The magnitudes are just kind of a for the UI, it's just kind of a value, right? This is how much this one's worth 5. This one's worth.
It's 20. Less impressive to see that you just purchased a $10 million item off the exchange that only gives you a plus 0.1.
Yeah, it's exactly. So when you see that the ablative armor has a 90 or whatever it says, it's 900, I think it says in the UI. It's like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So that item, the Mark 1 Disruptor Dampener, after you plug that through the diminishing return value, that +5 becomes +0.49986. So you can see it diminished, but by a tiny amount. If you have other abilities, you can you get all of their diminished values, and then you plug it into that final formula. And that final formula is just then will result in your actual damage resistance. And so that damage resistance is 4.8%.
I think it's important to note that because of the way that these formulas are put together, the diminishing returns, though it doesn't have a huge effect, affects everything above 1. And I don't believe there's even any items that give you only a +1.
It affects everything even less than 1. It will, but it's just it'll get to the point where you won't even see it because the decimal points are so small. And I want to make something clear again, just to be clear between the difference between damage resistance and the values you see on the items is the magnitude damage, the percent damage resistance versus the damage resistance mag.
And once you're at that point, once you've figured out your actual damage resistance there, is there any additional math, or is that basically if somebody hits you for a certain amount of damage, it will be reduced by 4.8%? That's
it. That's all the math. The only other thing going on is whether or not someone hits you with a debuff at the time. It starts getting a little harder to track your values as you become a higher level character because you have so many things going on. Before we did this, I wanted to just verify that all my ducks in a row, and I loaded up a high level character, and I'm like, where am I getting this value from? I can't just go around.
Well, yeah, things like ship skills have an effect on your damage resistance magnitudes.
A lot of the captain skills that they affect your ship, and says, okay, I had to figure out what kind of ship I am in, and how many, one was coming from a science, one was coming from a deep space science skill, and one was so it gets a little hard to track them all down to see where they're at, but they're all being accounted for in there. So that's why I'm just kind of starting with a simple example of a level 1 character where you can see that a lot easily.
It's also a lot easier for folks to wrap their brains around seeing that kind of an example. Well, Al, that is actually pretty good, and I think people will really enjoy taking a look at the spreadsheet that you've supplied for us. Thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
I will disseminate this information to the best of my ability, and hopefully we can have you again for another guest host math segment. I'm sure there's things that I have no idea even happened within the game that you have actually had your fingers in designing, so we'll be in touch.
Sure.
And thanks again for appearing on Stoked. You want to give us a sign-off here?
Sign off. Well, live long and prosper.
You got math.
You got math.
Yeah, I think that's
It's time for community feedback. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we asked you what you would do to change or overhaul the captain's table, and a lot of you wrote in, and it's time to feature that.
Why don't we go through some of the ones that we got from multiple people first?
Some of the common threads.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read those for you. For multiple suggestions, we got open it up to all players. Everyone's a captain after all.
Yeah, everybody is a captain after all.
What do you think of that?
I like it.
Yeah.
I've always thought that using it as a bonus for veterans was kind of contrived. Like, hey, we have this thing that we can add for...
Yeah, okay.
Plus, the other side of that is anything that you do to upgrade it would only be seen by a small portion of the population,
right?
Unless you open it to everybody.
True that, dude.
So
another thing that I also kind of was thinking of, and a lot of people wrote in, was to give me a direct transwarp to it.
Yes.
Assuming you make it an appealing place to go to, transwarp to it. I like that.
Right now, if you first you got to travel to soul space, then you got to zone into Earth space dock space.
Yep.
Then you need to fly over to the nebula,
and then you zone
into the captain table space.
Yep.
And then you fly to the captain's table and dock.
Yeah.
Then you're at the captain's
and then you zone again. Yeah. So a direct transwarp would be great, even if you put you in the interior or something. Maybe like, hey, they had a transwarp transporter in the new Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Maybe that somehow works. Something else that I would absolutely love, especially if it was poker, would be adding mini games, Dabo, poker, things like that to the captain's table.
Yeah.
Now, some people said maybe even give us slightly better odds, but I don't think that's going to happen.
could.
You could, but I don't think so. And that would be cool. That would be really cool to be able to go to the captain's table and have a poker night. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Now, we have also some direct ones from a few folks. Why don't we jump
this first one came from Nail Peter. Now, one of the specific reasons I wanted to bring his up first is because he actually read the entire series of the Captain's Table books.
Oh, okay.
It's a series of short stories.
Okay.
And there's different stories told by different captains. Anyway, a few key factors from the books that he thinks need to be implemented into the Stowe version of the Captain's Table are that it needs to be accessible from any station at any bar. So, like, if you go to K7, because that's how it's accessed in the game, is you go to a bar, and then there's a doorway or a portal of some sort that can take you to the captain's table. But you have to know it's there in order to be able to use it.
Okay.
So,
you don't
look
fly
like
to
a storage
it. So you don't fly to it.
Right.
So you could accomplish my other thing that I'd like to see is just not have it floating out in space.
Right. You get rid of that.
I dig that.
So you either go to Club 47 and there's a doorway in the back that takes you to the captain's table, or you go to K7 and there's a doorway on the side that takes the table. The important part, though, is that every one of those would take you to the same captain's table.
Right.
Because it's interdimensional.
Right.
Right. So another important thing is that it should not be a station. It should be a bar, an interior.
Like a lounge, Yeah,
apparently, according to the books, you never see it as from an exterior point of view. You're always in the captain's table. There is no exterior. Really.
There is no exterior. It doesn't exist.
Right.
It's just only inside that space of the bar it exists.
Right.
And if you took away the having
it's like
to fly
a pocket,
into it,
like a dimensional pocket of some sort.
Yeah, it would be pretty neat. And it's kind of loungy now. It's got wood. It's got red cushions and couches and stuff like that.
I like the aesthetics on the inside.
Yeah.
But one last thing he mentions is that it should include captains from all times, including at one point the captain of the Titanic shows up in the captain's table. Yes.
Wouldn't that be cool to have naval uniforms? And you could have captains there in TOS uniforms. You could have captains.
He says they also have captains from the future as well. That because it's interdimensional, it's timeless. Everybody that's ever been a captain that's had access to it has access to it at the same time window.
That's pretty intensive. Huh. All right. Well, Neil Wolf wrote in too, and I kind of like what he had to say.
Yeah, a quest line that includes the location and its backstory in game. Now, I think this is something important that we tried to point out when we first asked the question, is that not most people know that the Captain's Table came from a series of books, what it's about.
Right.
Well, we didn't know really until we asked the question, and I think it was Thomas the Cryptic Cat told us about the backstory to it.
In the chat room.
So if you implement something within the game that tells you about why it exists like this and why it's there and what it's for, that would go a long way to getting more people involved with experiencing it, I think.
Oh, absolutely. That's neat. Okay, so Stoney 997 wrote in or something. I forgot what it was.
997, yeah.
997. What did he say?
He says that two things. First of all, he thinks that there should be accolades associated with visiting it at some point. Now, one of his ideas was that the interior of the captain's table needs to be a bit more lively, a bit more alive. The NPCs that are currently there are just basically sitting there or just
lounging.
Standing there.
Maybe they're drunk.
Maybe. So the idea he had though was just to have more captains, cycle through kind of. Maybe there would be a different one at the bar every hour or something, and one would get up and leave, and another one would arrive.
When you went, there'd be different ones when you went there.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be neat.
And so one of his ideas for an accolade would be like meet 10 different captains at the bar of the captain's table. Cool. It's a very simple thing, and maybe you just click on them and say hi, or buy them a drink, or
read a quick story or something.
Yeah, but some sort of motivator to get you interested in learning more about the captain's table, which it goes back to the idea of a quest line as well, I think.
An accolade would definitely do it too. Now, the last one came in that we're going to read today is from Skippy2K.
Yep, and this one I think is the winner. To be honest, I totally agree with this. Move the mission replay function to the captain's table under the pretense that you are retelling your stories to Cap at the bar. Because if you recall, the story of the captain's table is that the drinks are free. You just have to tell a story as payment.
That would be cool. I like it. My interior can have a reason to go there, but if I have confidence stuff will be added to that in the future too.
Yeah, me too.
That is really cool. That's a great one, Skippy2K. Now, there's actually a thread about all of the captain's forms. There's a whole discussion on it on the Star Trek Online forums, and we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, actually, the name of the thread was, "Can we burn the captain's table?"
Ouch. Ouch. That's
a good place to start the conversation, right?
Yeah,
it can only go up from there.
That's putting a line in the sand. Why don't you tell people about the next community feedback segment?
Well, I think I want to disclaimerize this little conversation first, in that we did mention earlier this might get a little soapboxy. The whole content drought that's coming up right now. That might be a little bit of a dramatic way to put it, but the fact of the matter is that we know we're not going to be getting another series of featured episodes for 3 or 4 months.
I know, it's a long time, especially when they were just this good.
Now, it makes some sense because we know that they're waiting for the ground combat revamp and a few other technical things, so from a certain point of view, yes, it makes sense. But from a player standpoint, what do we do now?
I know, and it's difficult too because the online community is way more connected now than we've ever been, and so we can really grief together a lot more and sort of build up an echo chamber of grief. And so it's
going to start circling itself.
Yeah, it can kind of build proportionally, exponentially, and so the Foundry's there, and that's going to help. But I think really these weeklies have shown just that this game can just shine. I mean, these weeklies turn this game into a first-class, unique MMO. I mean, what other MMO out there is doing content like this?
Exactly.
So this is an industry exclusive. And to that end, I think it's appropriate when you're looking at it in the terms of what other MMOs are offering competitively and what STOked can offer. Obviously, the Foundry is going to be there, but this kind of weekly content is exactly the kind of competitive edge that this game needs for this exact gamer base.
Not only from a content point of view, but this has also just revitalized the entire community. Like you said, we're closer than we've ever been before, and we're more excited than we've ever been before about this game.
And we're getting more Star Trek than we've ever gotten before, and frankly, we have 30 years to, well, unfortunately not entirely 30 years, but over the 30 years, we've gotten very accustomed to getting our Star Trek fix every week.
Yeah.
And so, we thought we'd look at this from the business end of things.
Well, we have some suggestions on this, but let me go ahead and ask the question of our audience first so they can start thinking about this. And
I was getting ready to lay it on the folks.
I know, but so our community feedback question for the next episode or whenever we compile your answers is, what can Cryptic or what must Cryptic and or Atari do right now to keep the hype alive, to keep the interest in the game high, while we're going to be going through this downtime?
How do you please an uber-connected, twittering gamer base who just got off their weekly fix? How do you stretch that out for 4 months?
Now, keep in mind that your answers can't include content because we already know that's not going to be coming our way.
Let's think about it. Theoretically, yeah, if they're focusing on producing new content and creating new features to the game, well, then that just has to happen. So what can happen to fill those gaps? Now, we're doing a tweak on this. You're still welcome to email in your answer, but what we want to do is invite you to join us live next Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific, and we're going to do the video call in again, and we're going to get you up on the video wall and give us your thoughts live. So you have some time to mull it over, and then when you join us live, get your mug up there. And the good news is during last week's episode, we kind of did it for the first time, and we identified there was a little audio routing issue that caused some delay. With Skype's all cleared up
fixed
now, so we should have a nice, clean, fast connection.
He's a genius.
And the light bulb went off. So that's how we want to take next week's community feedback, so you can join us live and give your thoughts on the air.
Go ahead and lay your thoughts out now.
Okay, man.
All right.
I'll try not to get all worked up about this, but it's important to me. So if I get a little ranty, I apologize.
I just want to clarify up front, too, that I don't have my own opinion.
Okay.
I'm going with him on this.
I look at it like this. Atari is the parent company to Cryptic Studios, and they have had a rough couple of years until recently. Thankfully, since the launch of Champions Online and Star Trek Online, and we'll have these notes, these figures in our show notes if you want to check them out. Really great news for Atari. Since the launch of since Star Trek Online, Atari's revenue has gone up. In fact, if you look at it all, the revenue is actually up nearly 500%. From this time last year.
In 1 year.
Yeah, in 1 year's period.
Yes.
Their revenue went almost 500%, and that's primarily thanks to Cryptic Studios.
It is exclusively due to their online content.
Right.
We know that much, and we also know that Champions Online and Star Trek Online make up a pretty good portion of that. They also have publishing rights on DDO and the Test Drive Online, I think it's called.
But I don't know how much money they make off of those. But revenue from online games represented 44.9% of Atari's total net revenue for last period, compared to only 3.4% a fiscal year ago.
Yeah.
So you can tell that essentially Star Trek Online is a huge shot of adrenaline in the arm of a company that was beginning to struggle.
Yes.
Which is awesome for Star Trek Online. I fear that with the community as it is, it's important to continue to invest in here so we don't anger them and get people to leave. And also, honestly, people aren't going to play an MMO where there's a perceived lack of content.
Yes.
And that's just going to spread faster. I mean, blog posts happen every single day. It seems like now would be the time for Atari to invest. Now, I don't know the appropriate way to do that. Perhaps increasing content production team
Head
sizes
count,
and things
maybe,
like that.
yeah.
Maybe that's not a good idea. We don't know. We're not those people. But what doesn't seem like a good idea is a 4-month lull. I'm sure it won't be a complete lull. I'm sure.
No, and we know we're going to be getting the Foundry soon. There's going to be some new remastered missions. It won't be a complete drought.
But what an opportunity to just take a game that obviously has some momentum and really hit the thrusters.
I want to take that
full impulse.
I want to take that actually just one step further and say that I think that Atari needs to come out and not only do this, but do it publicly.
Yeah.
Across the board, say, you know what, we have had a great couple months with STO. It deserves the recognition. It deserves more support.
Cryptic announces a wide expansion of
something.
Yeah.
We don't know what the exact answer is on that point, but it looks like this is the time to do it. We can't afford to just sit back and let this stew.
Maybe we don't know. Maybe we're just a couple of guys on the internet, but when you look at the numbers, you look at the revenue, you look how what a positive impact Star Trek Online has had on Atari, you hope that that's acknowledged and that is being reinvested. Now, that said, what the team does is amazing work, so more power to them. And,
absolutely,
and we're going to, one of the things we're intending to do is feature more of the community-authored content during this period. And so stay tuned for more information about that.
So in our own way, we're trying to do our best to stave off those negative emotions.
Yeah, so, we're going to be, when the weeklies, now that the weeklies are over, we're going to start featuring Foundry episodes in our episodes and playing with you guys live on the stream, and that's how we're going to pass the time. But we'd like to hear what your thoughts are and what the best way to do that. So join us live next weekend and get on our video wall, right? That'd be really cool.
Make your voice heard for reals.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone who sent in their suggestions. We read them all and love them. And check the show notes for all of those as well. All right?
That is a heck of an episode we just finished.
Holy smokes, J-Man. I think that just about wraps up this episode of Stoked. Now, we come out every Tuesday over at JupiterBroadcasting.com, so you can get us on demand in just about any format you like.
And a few that you don't.
Probably. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of Stoked, and we'll see you next week. I'm going to hit record.
Okay. Nothing in my teeth, right?
We're good.
Yeah, okay.
Stoked 73, right? This is number 73.
Sure.
It's Stoked 73.
And just go to 74?
Sure.
I mean, who would notice, really?
Okay. This is 72, right?
73.